Hey guys, welcome back to the Hunt Suburbia Podcast. Today we've got Beau Martonik on. Super excited to have him. Beau is known for hunting mountains, finding mature bucks in the mountains, bow hunting a lot, but he also gun hunts. And he's got a lot of great insight on mountain hunting strategies. And we're excited to get into that podcast. But I do have some announcements, some important announcements about Hunt Stock Northeast at Wildwood Farm in Westminster, Massachusetts. We haven't given an update on that in a while, so there's a lot of cool things that you guys are going to want to hear here about what to expect from Huntstock Northeast this summer. So I'm going to go through that real quick. I'm going to try to keep it short. I know you guys want to get into the podcast with Beau, but there's just a lot of great info and things that you need to know about Huntstock Northeast that we got to cover first. So Beau Martonik will be there. He's going to be doing seminars 2 of the days and doing a live podcast on the 3rd day. So it's his first time coming to Huntstock in Massachusetts. Make sure if you like this podcast, you follow along with Beau. You want to come meet him and learn from him and his seminars. You're going to want to come to Huntstock in Massachusetts this summer, August 7th through the 9th. Also, new seminar speakers, Joe Donito and Jim Massett, Adirondack tracking legends. They came to Huntstock in Massachusetts in 2023, but haven't been the past 2 years. So they're making their return. They're coming this year. Those guys are a great team together. They deliver a world-class seminar, and they're just a lot of fun to hang out with throughout the weekend. So you're going to want to also come and see those guys, as well as Lanny and Rick and Jeff Doyle and Neil Pendleton and Jake Bennett and all the seminar speakers that are yearly staples at Huntstock. Randy Flannery, he's going to be delivering a great seminar. So make sure you come. Also, by the way, Dan Infalt's coming back. Dan Infalt was like super excited about the reception he got last year. He didn't think he had as many fans in the Northeast. He wasn't expecting a lot of fans, but he was super excited about the reception that he got, and he can't wait to come back this year, hang out with everybody, and deliver seminars again all 3 days at Huntstock. So you're going to want to come see Dan Infalt too. And now let's go over some of the other exciting new additions to Huntstock this year. Lanny Benoit and his family were, when they were doing shows in the 90s and the early 2000s. You might have seen, a trailer that would roll to the shows with them. Well, that trailer hasn't been to a show in more than 15 years, maybe even longer than that. But they're bringing it back out. They're refreshing the trailer, and they're bringing it to Huntstock to debut it, kind of the grand reopening of the Rolling Benoit Museum. So that'll have Benoit family artifacts in there. It'll have some of their biggest bucks, some great mounts, and it's a walkthrough trailer that you can spend some time in. So don't miss the grand reopening of the Benoit Bucks trailer. That's going to be awesome. And then Lanny has also started, I don't know how many people have heard about this yet, but he's started to make custom handmade knives like his dad was doing. But these are, they're different than his dad's. They've got, Lanny's own custom flair to them, but they are just as nice and just as collectible. I mean, they're going to be just amazing artifacts to keep or build your own collection or pass down in your family. So the only problem with Lanny making knives is he doesn't seem to have enough time to make a lot of them. So very, very limited supply. Who knows how many of these things are ever going to be out there on the market or ever going to be made. But what he is doing is making 5 custom Huntstock Lanny Benoit knives that will only be available at Huntstock. They're going to be numbered 1 to 5, and we're going to be giving away one of those at Huntstock. So that who knows how much that thing is worth, but that is a truly priceless item that's going to be given away as part of the door prizes. So we're giving that away on Saturday. If you want to make sure you have a chance at winning that, you have to be at Huntstock on Saturday. Door prizes are drawn at 6 p.m., so make sure that you're there at that time if you would like a chance to win that. Lanny's first knife that he made, he put up at a silent auction at a show up in Maine, and I don't know exactly how much it went for, but it was over $4,000. It was a high ticket item. So the demand is there. People are understanding that, Lanny is an absolute legend. He's not going to make a whole bunch of knives. So if they have a chance to get their hands on them, which you will at Huntstock in Massachusetts this summer, just make sure that you're there. Make sure that you don't miss out on this opportunity. And again, we're giving away one of those priceless knives on Saturday at Huntstock. So if you're just coming for one day, I think Saturday is the day to be there. But Sunday, we're going to be giving away the Legends Camp experience. So we did that last year with Lanny and Rick and Dan Infault and a bunch of other great hunters in the Northeast, all sharing deer camp out in Western Massachusetts for a 3-day muzzleloader hunt. So we're doing the same thing this year. Some of the names might change. We're working on the final details on who will be there that you'll have the opportunity to share camp with. There's a couple of scheduling conflicts and stuff, but we're also bringing in some new faces. So be on the lookout for that announcement. It's going to be an awesome experience, just like it was this last time. And you're going to get to share camp with some absolute legends. So be on the lookout for that. Once we finalize the details on it, we will put up the online giveaway, which will be drawing one lucky winner from the online giveaway, where all you have to do is give your email address in there. It's free to enter. And then we're going to be drawing one live at Huntstock on Sunday. So make sure that you're there on Sunday if that is the prize that you're looking forward to winning the most. Speaking of door prizes, a bunch of other ones that are starting to roll in. We've got Backroads Guide Service out of Maine giving a 6-day youth bear hunt over bait away, and that's worth $3,500 plus. Wilderness Escape Outfitters, which is Randy Flannery's outfitters, giving away a 6-day, 7-night unguided deer hunt with lodging and meals included. East Coast Archery is donating an Elite Era bow worth about $1,700. I'm sure we'll have a few more bows being added to the door prizes before showtime as well. We've got a gun that's going to be donated from Old Glory Guns and Ammo. They're just trying to decide what model. Last year, I believe it was a Savage outfitted with a Vortex scope. But this year that model is TBD, but they'll be giving away a gun. We probably will have a few more guns added as well, as we normally do in the last couple of months leading into the show. $5,000 or so worth of optics from Vortex, from rangefinders to red dots to binoculars, rifle scopes. I mean, all kinds of stuff from Vortex. Sig Sauer will be donating a bunch of stuff as well. And there's just going to be, all these are rolling in. If you guys want to see the list as it is today, go to our website, go to the Huntstock Northeast page, and at the bottom of the page, the list is getting updated weekly with new prizes that are added. But we guarantee $40,000 worth of prizes by showtime. Super fun experience to be there for the door prizes. You got 1,000 people or more waiting around the stage, and it's just, we keep it high energy. And it's just one of our favorite parts of the show, is that last hour each day when we draw those door prizes. So every ticket, every paid ticket that comes to Huntstock, you get a chance to win. Different ticket levels offer different, numbers of entries that you can get. If door prizes are your main thing, a Booner Pass is what you want to get. You're going to get 12 door prize entries with a Booner Pass and a bunch of other perks. And we only have, I think we have like 80 of those left, or less than 80. So if you want a Booner Pass, make sure you lock in and get that. Also a VIP pass, same price as a Booner Pass, but you get 6 door prize entries instead of 12. And the other major perk that you get is unlimited 3D archery rounds. So if 3D archery is more your thing, you might want to go with the VIP pass. If door prizes is your main thing, you're going to want to go with that Booner Pass. And both of those, there's less than 100. I think there's about 90 VIP passes left, and there's like 77 or something on the Booner Passes last time I checked. So make sure you get on and get those. Exhibitors, you can come see Tacticam, Vortex, 6 Hour, Hang Free, Hunt Light, Buzzard Roost. If you guys are into saddles, we'll have at least 3 saddle brands there with different mobile hunting gear that you can check out. Backyard Sense, Woodman Arms. There's going to be outfitters. It's a great expo and a great time to gear up. So make sure you come and support the exhibitors and buy some gear for the upcoming season as well. We've got the 3rd annual film festival. This year it's presented by Mount Grace Land Trust. And that's on Thursday night, the same night as the VIP night. We do some VIP, networking stuff. We'll have a special seminar speaker, and then we go into the film festival where we show 10 never before seen films, and they're all Northeast filmed hunts by Northeast filmmakers. It's a really fun time. If you want to attend that, that's included with the VIP pass and the Booner pass, or you can just go and get a ticket just for that night. If you're only planning on coming for one day or something, get a one-day pass and then get a ticket to the VIP night and come join us on Thursday night. It's a really cool, laid-back, fun way to kick off Hunt Stock weekend. If you're a filmmaker and you want to submit a film to the film festival, all the details are on the website. Go to www.huntstockevents.com, click on the events tab, and click on film festival. All the details for submission are there. You have to submit your film by July 15th. Okay, that's the deadline to keep in mind. So you have a little bit more than a month now to finalize your films. We're looking forward to seeing all the submissions. We already have about 5 submissions. And usually in this last month, we'll get another 15 or so. So the top 10 will be notified before the show that you are in the top 10 so that you can be there to come watch your film premiere. So looking forward to that. Mount Grace Land Trust is a great new partner, and they're putting up all the prize money. So the winners get, there's a $5,000 prize pool for the top 3 films in the film festival that everybody is vying for. So we know everybody works really hard on their films. We wanted to make sure that we have a good prize pool out there so that, it rivals some of the national outdoors film festivals in the country. I think it's right up there and with the Badlands Film Festival in terms of the prizes, the what you can win if you finish in the top 3. So we really look forward to it. To seeing all those films every year. Make sure you submit by July 15th. Again, just go to the website to find all the details. The 3D archery course at Huntstock, highly rated course. It's built to get you into real life hunting scenarios, get you into shooting shape for the season. So you got realistic things that we'll encounter in the Northeast, 20 to 50 yard shots for the majority of them. There might be one long one just for fun. But it's a course that is going to put you in some things that you might encounter during the season. People who have shot Total Archery Challenge and shoot a lot of 3D in New England, they say this is the best bow course to get out there and actually get you ready for the bow season, and it's a lot of fun. So make sure that you guys come and bring your bows. You can purchase single rounds to 3D archery if you want on the website. So if you just want to shoot once or you want to shoot twice, you can do that. But you get unlimited 3D archery if you get a VIP pass. So make sure you check that out. And then really, guys, all we're asking is it helps us out tremendously if you get your tickets online, if you get them now so that we can see the prediction and we can predict how many people approximately are going to be at Huntstock, which just helps us behind the scenes to run a smooth show, make sure that we have the right number of supplies, we ordered the right number of lanyards, the right number of wristbands, all of that stuff. We just try to predict based on how the previous shows looked in ticket sales. So get them online. It's going to be cheaper. It's not going to be, it's going to be more expensive at the gate. So one of the things we changed this year, we switched ticketing platforms because there were, I think it was like a 7.5% ticketing fee everybody was getting charged in our previous platform. Well, we didn't like that. We wanted to make the online ticket absolutely the cheapest way to go. So we got a new platform. There are no ticketing fees. And if you use a discount code, some of the content creators or seminar speakers out there, they have discount codes. You can go find one of those. Or if you want to use code CHEAP, CHEAP at checkout, that'll get you 10% off the prices as well. And again, with no ticketing fees. So that is the absolute cheapest way to get your tickets. It helps us out tremendously with show planning. So please go to www.huntstockevents.com, click the tickets tab, If you're coming to Northeast, click the Northeast event. If you're going to the Midwest show, click the Midwest event, get tickets for that one too. That's going to be an awesome show. But please do that. It helps us out tremendously. And we are looking forward to seeing everybody at Huntstock this summer. So last thing, before we get into the podcast with Beau Martonik, this episode is brought to you by onX. It's a great tool for every hunter to have in their toolbox. I use it constantly. I use it to find property lines, to find setback distances from houses, so I know that I'm outside of that 500-foot bubble that we have to be out of in Massachusetts. I use it to mark rubs and scrapes and bedding areas, stand trees, camera locations. I use LiDAR a ton to find like little hidden micro funnels. I use it to find heavy acorn producing areas and just many, many other great features on there. So go to onxmaps.com and use code HS20 for 20% off your membership if you would like to try it out as well. And I encourage that you do. All right, let's get into the podcast now with Beau Martonik. Again, you can see him at Huntstock in Massachusetts this summer. If anybody has any questions on anything, feel free to email me at huntsuburbia@gmail.com. Here he is, Beau Martonik. Okay, welcome back to another episode of Hunt Suburbia Podcast. On a little bit of a podcast recording spree here. So you guys, over the next couple of weeks and next couple of months, just be expecting to get back into more of a regular podcast schedule. We might even be putting out 2 per week here all the way through the summer. So we're back, and today we've got Beau Martonik on from East Meets West. So thanks for jumping on, Beau. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good seeing you again, Pat, and talking to you. I'm looking forward to getting to see you in person here in a few months.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Me too. Yeah, you came to Huntstock, the one that we did in New York a couple of years ago. Yeah, but you'd never been to the one in Massachusetts, which is, to me, it's just, that's where Huntstock all started, man. It's a blast. You'll see it'll be a little bit different of a feel than the one that you went to out in New York. That one year we did it there. There's like we already starting to feel like a little bit of history to it, at this Massachusetts show.
No, I'm really excited about it, and I even at that New York one, like I feel like I got to see a little bit more of the Northeast culture, and I really liked it, and I like the people that I got to meet and be there. So like I'm really looking forward to it. It's funny because Pennsylvania is considered the Northeast, but I still feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect from the true Northeast states.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah. So we'll talk through this podcast. I want to talk a little bit about the Pennsylvania hunting culture and maybe some of those differences and stuff. It's a state I've never gone to hunt, but it is on my list. It's not too far of a drive. I know there's some really good opportunities and some good pieces of public land to be able to jump on out there. So I'm super interested in talking to you about Pennsylvania. Why don't we just start with what was hunting growing up? What was it like for you? Were you a deer camp guy, or how did you get introduced to hunting?
So my family is a big hunting family, and everyone in my family, both sides, my mom's side, my dad's side, were big hunters. And so I never had a choice. It was like, that's what I was going to do. And as a young kid, especially like during the summertime and stuff, like I would go to camp with my grandfather, and he was the one that kind of showed me and my brother how to shoot guns, probably way earlier than we should have. Shooting, pellet guns and BB guns, and then up to 22s, and then just like kind of elevating your way through and learning to shoot bows and going to do all of that at a young age. But I was lucky to have that camp that my grandpa had purchased and kind of fixed up back in the 90s. So it was a great time as I was growing up. Those memories at deer camp, whether it was hunting season or not, I think really helped me keep my interest, because like at that time, especially in the area that I'm in Pennsylvania, not to go too specific, but kind of like the northern region, where there's not any ag. It's just very, just woods everywhere. And the deer density was so low at that time that seeing a deer at all was a feat. So that as a kid, I feel like that can be discouraging or difficult for people to fall in love with hunting when you have, as a kid, having an attention span that's short and being cold and everything else. But like those stories I heard at deer camp from my dad, from my grandfather, from my uncles, from everybody, like that gave me that imagination of what could be happening, like what could walk out and be able to see that. Like my first hunt when I was 12, at the time you had to be 12 to hunt in PA. I remember sitting in a double ladder stand my dad put up, and we were sitting there, and a spike walked out on the gas line, and my dad's like, get ready. And I remember looking through the scope, and I was like, Dad, he's just a spike. And he's like,
What?
He's like, what? He's like, shoot. I'm like, I want to shoot big bucks like you do. He's like, shoot. I was like, okay. I didn't know any better at that time. And then, I shot and I got that deer, and I was so pumped, and I'm very, very thankful that was like how I got started in it. And I was just through the roof. At the time I sounded like kind of an ungrateful little kid, wanting a big buck right off the bat, but I didn't know any better. I just saw, as they got to their stage in their life where they were chasing bigger deer, it was, I just wanted to be like my dad,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, it can be kind of like you said, it could be hard to introduce a kid in scenarios like that. I mean, my deer camp, very, very similar kind of setup, big woods. It's all, no agriculture. It's all just woods and really, really low deer density. And I started going out in the woods with my dad. I think I was 8, hunting along with him, and there were long walks in, and there wasn't a lot of action all the time. But what I remember the most about that is that meant literally anytime you started hearing the crunch of like a deer approaching at that age, and because there wasn't a lot of action, like that was the most exciting thing in the world. So in some ways, starting out in a place like that where it is harder, I think it instills in you that like this is going to be a hard thing to do, and it allows you to appreciate being able to work hard for it. And then it also, what it does is once you start shooting big bucks, once you start coming into your own and figuring out hunting in whatever area that you're at, you don't forget, like, I don't neglect my deer camp now because, I've kind of figured out suburban bow hunting. I look forward to going back there, and I still get excited. I shot a 3-pointer from my Vermont deer camp this year because
yeah.
I still remember, like, it's, the out at deer camp, a legal buck comes by, you better take your opportunity, man.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember my second year, I was 13, and I ended up shooting like a real nice. Especially at that time, it was right after the antler restrictions got put in Pennsylvania, so we were just starting to see some like older age class deer. Before it was like a 90-inch buck was like making the front page of the paper.
Yep.
And I shot an 8-point that year with my dad that was 21 inches wide, like 120-inch type deer. And it was like, in the youth division, I won the big buck contest, or I took second in the big buck contest. And it was like this big, big deal. And I remember all these old timers coming up to me as a kid. I still remember it sitting on the tailgate with my dad, and they'd come up and be like, you better enjoy this one. You're never going to shoot one any bigger than that, and I don't know, whatever reason, I was like, there's got to be out there. But I was also and it took me years again to shoot one bigger. But it was just like that. We were at a coming of an age where the as far as mature deer goes, Pennsylvania was getting better. It was just on the upswing of having that. So
what do you think the state of the deer herd is now in Pennsylvania? Like, how do you compare it to back then?
So it's very dependent on the area. Like in the areas that I hunt, I think it's great right now. It's not overpopulated, I wouldn't say. A lot of the state is overpopulated, but it's at a good level. You can still go days without seeing a deer, but it's not there's multiple doe groups in areas now versus maybe one doe group of 3 or 4 for a square mile. That's not facts, it's just me uh assuming. But there is it's good. It seems like a decent buck to doe ratio. I feel very good about things now. I do fear that because the population has to get to where it has been now, that's a lot of that's happened in the last 5 years. So it's growing quickly, and that concerns me of getting to too high of numbers, and then you won't have the health of the deer because they're competing for all the food, and there's the food is browse and some mass crop depending on where you're at, but uh right now it's in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you, are there any cuttings or anything in the woods that you hunt, or is it all like just natural browse and mast?
A lot of cutting.
There is. That's
So
good.
yeah, and that, I think, my belief is that a lot of that has to do with the maturity of the deer because they can hide, and then also they've got good food with a lot of the new growth. So the way that a lot of Pennsylvania was in the 1930s, 20s, and 30s, it was like clear cut. Like the whole northern half of the state was like wiped off completely, like a mismanaged way of harvesting timber. But now you're getting to that 100-year cycle of when some of those trees that are mature again, a lot of them are hitting that point again where they need to be cut and managed. So you're seeing more of them in a much more sustainable way, just in smaller segments here and there. So seeing a lot more cutting, and definitely seeing it benefiting the deer herd. And I think that probably is a lot to do with the population increasing too, because it can, now you have a higher carrying capacity for deer because there is more food to go around. And I think overall, people argue with me on this, but less hunters uh across the board.
Yeah, yeah. It seems, everybody, all the state agencies, all the graphs and charts you see is that hunting licenses are declining. Yet you still hear from a lot of, you just hear it in all corners of the internet and stuff that, public land is getting overcrowded. So it's kind of like how do both of those things happen at the same time?
Well, it's yeah, that's a sticky one, and there's a lot to unpack with it. But I do, at least from what I've seen, is like certain seasons have more pressure than they used to. Like the first week in November has more pressure than before. But gun season, that used to be you couldn't walk around a tree without seeing orange, isn't that way other than maybe opening day. So
Yeah,
it seems
bow
like
hunting is becoming a lot more. It's shifting towards bow hunting. Even in Massachusetts, a lot of these places where the bow harvest is finally catching up and surpassing what used to be like the
yeah.
huge deer harvest during gun season.
Yeah, because like I don't think the state agencies are fudging the numbers at all. Like I do believe that the overall hunter numbers are declining. I just think they're changing where they're shifting. And also, like, a lot of states, I have to say, like, positive about Pennsylvania as far as public land. There's a lot of public land, and it's actually even increasing. But what is decreasing is all of the private land that was open to public hunting, and even like timber company properties, gas properties, whatever you name it, that are becoming leased up. Yeah, mostly leases. Those types of things that do push maybe a smaller amount of people, but into smaller areas overall, which can create in pockets more pressure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's one thing that we still haven't seen in most of the northeastern states, north of Pennsylvania. not a lot of leasing yet. So, where that's encouraging from my standpoint,
Yeah.
but in Maine, there are definitely leases, but Maine has so much public land and so much land that's private that isn't leased too. But you'll have like outfitters and stuff up in Maine that can lease 200,000 acres, and it's their property to hunt,
Dang.
and their clients. But yeah, I haven't seen it in Massachusetts yet, or New Hampshire, or Vermont. Maybe it's just because the deer aren't nice enough to kind of force that happening. But it feels like kind of an inevitability across most of the country that seems like the way hunting is moving. So yeah, hopefully. What are some of the things going on in Pennsylvania? Like you said, your public land is increasing. So is the state buying up like big pieces of land, or how's that working?
Yeah, I wouldn't say always big pieces. Some of them are, but like
Yeah,
I've paid, I guess I pay more attention to it now than I used to, but it seems like they're buying more places to turn into game lands and things along those lines, which is positive. Like a lot of people in Pennsylvania will talk down on the game commission and the state agencies, which people from every state do that because there's things I don't like for sure, but overall, like I'll give props where it's due, and I think they're doing a pretty good job overall with managing things, and I've put a lot of effort into voicing my opinion on trying to keep or try to increase public land access. Even though we're good, we don't want to be trying to play catch up as things start going on the downside. And it also depends on the area of the state. When you get around some of the major cities, a lot of those farms that people used to get permission to hunt on, those are becoming leased, and that's harder to turn into something that's public versus something that's owned by
yeah,
a timber company property, or timber company or paper company or whatever that might be. But it's encouraging to hear what you're talking about with the some of the other northeastern states. I'll be interested to see if that changes through time or
yeah,
not. And because like I've been at the very beginning when they first started leasing some of these places that my family used to hunt, and everything that they turned into, is very, very, very against it. And I still don't love the idea, but I'm also at the point where it's like I can't blame the companies at the same time for being able to cover their costs of their taxes and everything else. I don't like it, but it is what it is. And I've taken part in it since, of like hunt clubs per se, like you'd hear in the South, where there might be 200 people on 7,000 acres that give you access to this or that. And it's honestly, that I don't fully understand like the obsession with it, because my experience that I've had with a few properties that have done that has been worse than public, because everything is accessible from an ATV.
yeah,
And everyone thinks because they're on private land that they can do whatever they want, and that they just ride around a lot. And it's honestly, the pressure's worse.
yeah, yeah.
So
I can see that. Are you so are you generally hunting the same pieces of land that you did as a kid from your camp? Like, were you able to see how the land has changed and hunt some of the historic spots and then get better and better and then target, big bucks like you wanted to, like your dad was killing when you were a kid, and your dad's still killing them? He seems like a great hunter. Are you still hunting those pieces, or are you kind of moving around a little bit?
I cycle back and forth. Like I'll hunt completely new stuff that I've never been to before, and then I'll also like keep a few back pocket spots, as I call it, that I'll always kind of run a few cameras and check every spring and scout. And it's like, all right, I pick up a big shed or get a nice one in there that I want to focus on, then I might prioritize it a little bit more. But I, I love just seeing new ground. So I
Yeah.
tend to spread out a little bit, but you can definitely learn a lot when you spend time in the same areas over and over again, and seeing the cycles of like when I'm now I've been doing it long enough where I can remember some clear cuts that have turned into, they're 20-year-old plus
Yeah.
pole stands now, so it's like getting to see that is pretty cool, and seeing how some of those places have changed. And then some of them that, even though a lot of it has changed as far as the forest and everything, I'll still find some of the same scrapes that my dad showed me
Yeah.
when I was younger. So
Yeah. Yeah, the terrain doesn't change. The terrain stays the same.
yep.
And a lot of those scrapes are probably terrain based. They were there for a reason.
Yeah. And they like but some of the places that I grew up hunting, it's always a joke between me and my dad, but like when I was in college was when he like really kicked me out of the nest, as far as like it's time for you to find your own spot sort of deal.
Yeah.
So it was yeah, then we started competing with each other, all friendly type of deal, but we all kind of hunt our own areas until gun season. Then if anybody has a tag, we try to help everybody out, but typically we have our own areas and spots, and we'll review maps together and look at things, but we, generally hunt different areas.
And is all of your hunting big timber stuff? Do you have any places where you hunt ag, or do you like just focusing on big timber mountain bucks?
So I actually kind of recently, I never hadn't said this on my podcast or anything yet, but I kind of moved to ag country. Um, so part time, I still have my place, in the mountains, in the big timber, but yeah, so now I'm gonna have to learn something a little bit new, as far as like I think I'm always gonna travel there to hunt like the rut and hunt probably gun season, that stuff, but I may try to learn some of this ag country, early season, late season, look at that type of stuff, which I don't have a lot of experience doing that. I hunted a little bit of it in college. I hunted a little bit of it in Ohio for a couple years. And, and then in Iowa last year when I hunted, but I'm just drawn. It's less about the ag or not. I just like being able to go and not worry about property lines a lot, or like it's kind of in my control to be able to hunt when I've got just thousands of acres of vastness to be able to go
Yeah.
to. And I just like it. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I absolutely love when there's no boundaries. But it's going to be fun. I mean, it'll be a fun challenge for you, man. I'm pretty envious because I'm a true believer in not getting stuck and hung up in one particular way of hunting and then only sticking into that, that narrow focus. I think hunting is and especially with whitetail deer, the opportunity is so diverse. There's so many different ways to enjoy it that, I don't think you're really getting the full experience if you just focus and hunt the same way over and over in the same places. And I really learned that when I started this podcast and had to learn how to become an archery hunter and learn the suburbs, which was completely different than, deer camp hunting. It's such a fun process, and it's still going, and so that's cool that you're going to be kind of starting a journey like that.
Yeah, and like even and it's like flat too, where I'm at. So like not just adding ag to the mix, just like very
Yeah.
little terrain, which is
Yep.
just foreign to me to be able to hunt. Like I scouted one day in the spring here, and I remember walking on the edge of this field, and I was like looking at like all the swamp, and like the snow melt had just happened, so everything's kind of swampy, and it was like I went over my boots just on the edge of the cornfield. And I was like, man, I'm not used to the swamp type,
Yeah.
mix of ag. It'll definitely be a learning curve, but like you said, I mean, I'm excited about it. Like for the most part, when I've done different type of hunts, it's been for different species. Like I love learning a new species out west, elk hunting, mule deer hunting, caribou, moose, whatever. I really love
Yep.
that process of kind of starting over and trying to do research and spend time out there and try to learn those things. And so it should be fun.
Yeah. Have you done any like shed hunting around where you moved to now to like try to just go out and see if you find any big slammers that you can try to focus on in your new area?
One day I did. Yeah, one day, because most of the spring I was at my other place, and so I was focusing on the places that I've was hunting most of it. So when I came here, one day I got out for like half a day, and I was like, I'm gonna go scout. I'm like, oh man, let's walk these cornfield edges and pick up some sheds, and I didn't find anything. But it was fun to get to see it and start to get an understanding of the layout and seeing how the deer trails are moving in and the different types of trees that were in the woods, and like just trying to it's fun. I mean, I've been pouring over maps, just like looking at that. Like I said, it's probably going to be a little while before I like fully try to learn it a lot. Just for lack of a better term, like, I love hunting the big woods and doing that and going through it. So this is something that's going to be a process, I guess. I know it's going to take me a while to pick it up.
Yeah. And I also think like sometimes it's just like your life situation at some point might force you to hunt closer to home. Like you start having kids, things like that. That's what happened with me. It was like, I might as well start scouting around home here because I've got kids and I'm going to be able to get away with less of those, 4 or 5 hour long trips getting away for the weekend. And it kind of forced me into it. I was one of those guys that never wanted to hunt anywhere else besides deer camp. That was just where I loved it. I loved the woods. I loved all the culture, all the stuff I had learned over the years. And hunting the suburbs, that was before I literally even knew. I wasn't watching YouTube or anybody else who'd done it. No Seek One stuff. And I just, in my head, didn't think the suburbs would be a good place to hunt. And boy, is it though. There's a lot of deer, a lot of nice deer too.
Yeah. Funny story about the suburbs in college. One of my really good friends, and still one of my good friends today, he grew up outside of Pittsburgh, and he's like, come down and hunt with me. And it was in the suburbs. And man, I felt so uncomfortable. Like we'd be walking, through like this, cul-de-sac and all these big houses. And he was in landscaping in the summer. So I'd get permission from these landowners that they'd work on to go hunt deer. And it was like just wild to see it. And at that time, now like that county specifically in PA, you can hunt bucks earlier than you can most of the rest of the state in early September. But at that time it was doe only, and we were hunting in that early September doe season.
Yeah.
And I remember having just a hammer of a buck come underneath me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is insane. Like there's people in the yard up there, and like it was a really cool experience that definitely put me out of my comfort zone to just experience it.
Yeah. Well, let's focus a little bit into some mountain deer hunting and some mountain deer strategies and stuff. Let's talk about, you mentioned like doing some e-scouting. Like what is something now when you pull out your app to do some e-scouting? If you're going to be looking at a new place, like what is something that jumps right out at you?
First thing for me when I'm looking at a map is trying to find as much vegetation diversity as possible. We talked about clear cuts earlier. Not all places have it, but this is where I start. And even in places that don't have clear cuts, typically you can see, variations of hemlock or pine or mountain laurel or anything and so I'll flip between the different satellite images, from summer still tells me a lot. Leaf off, I can start seeing laurel and I can start seeing other things there. So I'm just like looking at places, because in areas that are all just like mature timber, those places, if there's not a good mass crop, sometimes it can be difficult. Either those deer will leave to try to go to find something in a different area, because that mature timber chokes out a lot of the browse a lot of times. So I want to find something that's going to keep deer there year after year. That's like kind of a starting point. Plus those edges help with predicting travel and things there. And then that's when I overlay terrain and trying to find terrain that also is the type of terrain that I like to hunt. And I've hunted big woods areas that are everything from flat that have like swamps and everything in there to extremely steep stuff. And I think the steep stuff is easier to hunt than the flat stuff, not physically, but as far as deer movement is a little bit more, it's easier to predict how they're going to move when you have some terrain there. So like if I can find some sort of terrain that's mixed in with that vegetation diversity, and then at that point I'm like backing out again, and like before I start diving way into it and marking all these spots, I want to see what access looks like, see what I'm going to run into as far as maybe problems with people or anything else. So I'll just go around, and anywhere that there's the obvious, like depending on the type of public land, they might have like access gates, but there also might be pull offs where someone could go in, and an old grassy logging road that goes in. It's like, okay, I mark all those spots to try to figure out where that could come from. And at that point, it's like, okay, I can start seeing a bigger picture of what's going on.
Noticed in Pennsylvania, like the times that I've been driving through there and looking at maps and stuff, there seems to be a lot of like the ridges that are just real long, and they look the same on both sides, like almost like a continuous, elevation change, and then at the top they can be very flat. Is that kind of the stuff that around where you're hunting, or is that a different area?
Not exactly. That a lot of that, like those big long ridges, I've hunted some of that. Mostly like some of the places that I'm hunting have more changes and benches and fingers that come off of the main ridge versus the big long ones. Like that's like the direct center of like the Appalachian range that runs through there, where you have the super long ridges. But there's a lot of places that do have, pretty much everywhere, that have like flatter tops, where like when I go in, say, West Virginia and some of the places I hunt, you might find, and there's also areas in PA like this too, don't get me wrong, but where you'll have those like knife ridges. But for the most part, you can get up and it might be 100 yards wide on the top, or it could be a mile wide across the top. So
yeah, that's the kind of stuff I really like. When I was looking at maps and seeing those long monotonous ridges and then flat tops, I was just thinking to myself how boring that hunting there would be. I really like where there's a bunch of different drop offs, and every which way you've got terrain features, and the real hill country. I love that stuff. What's your favorite terrain feature to hunt?
That's creek bottoms.
Yeah.
Oh, creek bottoms are, when I say that, it's because that's where I've had the most success out of, if I had to look at any terrain feature, it's creek bottoms. It can look a variety of different ways. The common, I guess, term that I learned through this industry is thermal hub, but in the bottoms, where like I feel like it's something that is said a lot, that you can't hunt in those bottoms because of swirling winds and everything else, and that's not wrong, but I think it's wrong that it's saying that you can't hunt a lot of those places. But if you get the right conditions, it can be good. Calm days, So you're not having as much swirling. If you set up right on the water that's coming through there, thermals are pulling down a certain direction. And then typically deer aren't bedding in those places. So like even when you do have swirling winds, which are going to happen, it's you just need it to be right for that 20 seconds while something is coming through there. So when I'm thinking of that, and that's mostly rut hunting, but I have killed one opening day in a similar type spot before too. It I just like those types of locations. They are kind of hard to hunt depending on the conditions, but they've been repeatable for me.
Do you like to what part of the creek bottom do you find that you keep gravitating towards? You know, let's just say creeks running from some high elevation and straining down at the bottom. Do you like to be up high where it kind of flattens out up there, or down at the bottom where it's draining out, or somewhere in the middle?
It that can be very dependent. The biggest thing about the creek bottoms is if it's too steep to come together, that's where it's really really difficult to be able to hunt. But where you get where it comes down and you have a little bit of a flat
Yeah,
bottom,
yeah.
then you have more leniency with the wind from my experience to be able to hunt. But pretty much I'm looking for some reason for multiple trails to cross at that particular point. That could be a beaver pond. That could be uh, just the way that the river runs through there, or a couple points that dump off in that place. And it's just a logical crossing that because they'll run parallel to the water and then also crossing. So like my ideal setup, I can think of one in my head that I used to hunt a while ago. I haven't been back to the spot since the beavers left, but there was a beaver pond, and at the head end of it was a really good crossing, and there was a big scrape that was underneath this one hemlock, and they'd come from either side of the ridge and then run parallel there. And it was like, man, if you it could be very lonely sits, but like I learned from like November 6th, 7th through the 15th, if I could sit there all the time, it was a good spot. And like those types of places, I feel like you can get away with hunting them over and over and over again
Mm-hmm.
because deer aren't living, essentially right there. You're catching them crossing as they're moving through and in those particular spots.
Yeah, what have you learned about um buck bedding and trying to predict buck bedding in bigger woods? I mean, it's a real tall task because they are constantly moving. They've got to move farther to find doe groups. Have you been able to come up with any kind of pattern and the types of places that a mature buck is bedding in the big woods?
I think I can recognize areas. To say that I would hunt a singular bed, I've tried it. I have not had success with it. I've
Yeah.
run cameras on them and I've watched everything from the biggest buck in the woods to fawns lay in those beds. And so I'm typically looking at it from an area perspective. Now I pay attention to big beds, don't get me wrong. And there's some that I think they use more often than others, but typically it seems like they're areas, and those areas could be as small as an acre, or it could be even up to 10 acres that they're using for a period of time. But like there's I was really breaking down this area this spring as I'm hunting a particular buck, and I've known this area for a long time. I've got a lot of history in it, and I was assuming that bucks were bedding in this one corner of this old cut in the early season because I'd find all these rubs there and all this stuff. And then I learned that, well, I would run cameras on the outside. I'd throw early season hunts near it. I wouldn't even see a deer. And I'm like, what is going on? And it took my cousin really bringing a light bulb off to me. And he's like, do you think that's just where they push, he pushes does into there and they spend like a portion of the rut like in that area? And I went back in and I looked, and like it was obvious once I looked at it. The shavings from the rubs are on top of the leaves. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, these leaves are falling in mid to late October. So it's got to be sometime after that when it's seemingly being used more so. So then I started, running cameras on the outskirts and all that stuff. And it was like October 15th, 16th, 17th, like boom, all of a sudden they're there, and they're there through a portion of November. And then that's it. And so it's like, okay, identified that is like a rut type, bedding area. Then there's other places that's like near, more food source type stuff. That area doesn't have any mast that I can find where it's like a point of the ridge, your typical, like thinking point of the ridge, buck bed off of it, all these rubs leading to it, a few oak trees nearby. It's like, okay, I can assume a little bit more so that this might be earlier on, and until I get data, whether that's either hunting it or scouting that time of year. But I do a lot of my scouting in the spring, so there's a little bit of guesswork involved, and it might take a couple years to really learn that particular spot.
Oh yeah. Do you do a lot of your scouting while shed hunting at the same time?
Yeah, with the priority on scouting, shed hunting is a back burner. The only time I really like shed hunt is if I'm trying to find some antlers before somebody else does, and then knows about a deer that I'm at least hoping other people don't know about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. My dad seems to like have it down where he can do both. Well, he puts a lot of time in the woods, but me, I can't do both at the same time. Well, it's because to shed hunt, when I'm successful shed hunting, it's spending a lot of time in a small area of really combing it.
And you're just going nuts. I mean, you're on a mission when you're shed hunting. You're going fast. You're just
Yep.
pounding through the woods. Yeah. I definitely, I think that I'm decent at shed hunting and scouting at the same time, but I hear from a lot of people, it's like, I can't do both at the same time. I can't, my brain doesn't focus that way,
Yeah, it's like, and I'll inadvertently come across sheds while I'm scouting. Like, or if I'm going through an area and I'm scouting, and all of a sudden this one hillside's all tore up with digging and winter feeding sign. I'm like, all right, I'll do a couple passes through here. I might divert a little bit and see if I can find something. Or if I'm going through a bedding area, which I really want to break down anyways, those are times when I'll find, like, I feel like I find sheds more in like bedding area spots than I do food sources, because for me to like say go across an oak stand or anything, and or just like a big open cut and try to grid that, I also just, I don't know if I don't have the discipline or what. I just hate doing it. I feel like I should be somewhere else, like finding actionable sign that I can use in the future.
Hey guys, just a quick break. Wanted to let you know that Big Woods Bucks is having their official launch event with Henry at Frank's Gun Shop in Amsterdam, New York, this Saturday, June 13th, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm going to be driving out there just saying hey to everybody and showing my support. But they're going to be unveiling their new Big Woods Bucks Henry Long Ranger rifle. It'll be there in limited supply, for purchase. So if you are interested in getting one of those, you're probably going to want to get there early. I would say show up at 8:30 if you can, just to make sure you get the first look and first chance at buying a rifle. I'm looking forward to it. Every time Big Woods Bucks makes a new rifle, they're always great, and they're super collectible as well if you're into that. But this sounds like a great rifle to actually take out hunting. Choice is yours. Keep it, collect it, or take it out and put some wear and tear on that thing. So it's going to be at, again, Frank's Gun Shop, Amsterdam, New York. The whole event, it's a Big Woods Bucks and Henry launch event, but it's presented by Onyx. Onyx has been a great partner of mine, and I know they've been a great partner of Big Woods Bucks. They're giving away a lifetime elite membership at that event, so that's worth $2,000 if you're going to planning on buying a membership every year for the next 20 years. And if you live 40 years, that thing's worth $4,000. So that's a really cool prize. Big Woods Bucks will be giving away some stuff too, different types of gear. And then the Big Woods Bucks podcast, the Adirondack Hunt podcast, they'll be doing live podcasts there. So you might have the opportunity to jump on and tell a deer story and hang out with everybody. I think it's just going to be a great day of camaraderie, and a really cool unveiling of a new partnership between Big Woods Bucks and Henry. So if anybody wants to say hi, come say hi and go out and support the guys over at Big Woods Bucks. So we'll see you there on Saturday. Looking forward to it. Again, Frank's Gun Shop in Amsterdam, New York, Saturday, June 13th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tell me about a buck that you hunted that haunts you the most. Like, tell there's got to be one. Tell me about that story.
Oh, okay. So there's a deer that I named back in the day. Okay, his name was Hercules. I called him, and he was like the first true like giant deer that I had on camera. That like 160 to 170 type deer. That was in 2015. It was a new area. I picked up this deer on camera in the summertime, and I was like, oh man, I'm all in hunting this deer. And at the time, I had 2 weeks vacation off of work, and was I? Yeah, I was hunting Ohio at that time too. So like I had pretty much a week that I could take off, and then the other week was for our out of state trip that I had. But then like I'd hunt it as much as possible, weekends, whatever else, and it ended up being November the 14th. I was in that spot I described to you at the beaver pond earlier, and I let out a grunt, and I heard "Brrr," and coming down off the hill down to that bottom was Hercules, and he came and he didn't, all the other deer, when I called to them there, it was kind of open in front of me. So what I did wrong was when he heard my grunt originally came down, I should have just shut up, but he came down and he paused for a while on the edge and just like staring out. And then out of, I think, probably nervousness, I just like grunted at him again. And then he's like, I don't see this. So I'm going to circle and try to get downwind. So he went up in the brush, circled me, and he was probably about 34 yards behind me. And I did not expect the deer to be there. And I misjudged the yardage and I clipped him just underneath a shot. Like I cut like probably the bottom of his armpit there. And it haunted me really bad. So then that's the first part of the story, but I, looked for his sheds that year, didn't find him, didn't know if he was alive, what happened, did another hunter get him? And then the next year got him on camera again. And maybe my hit was a little bit more critical than I initially thought, as far as the opposite side. He had lost his 10th point, and he had like this big club on the 9th, just being a 9 point, but he was still a big deer. Would have scored less than he did the previous year. But that year I ended up finding one of his sheds. I hunted him all year, no encounters, ended up shooting a different deer in there. And then following year, 2017, he blew up again into an absolute mega. And man, I could not get another opportunity at that deer. And he actually might have went in the 2018. I think he did. And then after that season, I never saw him, never heard of him getting killed, but he obviously died somehow, and never found him dead, nothing. And it's funny because, had you met Johnny before?
No,
my buddy Johnny.
No,
Johnny Stewart. Johnny told me, that was right around the time when I met Johnny, 2015-ish time frame. And Johnny he tells me afterwards, which I'm thankful for, but he's like, Beau, he's like, I just don't think you were ever going to kill that deer. And I was like, what? I said, man, that's not very nice. Like, what? He's like, he was just very random. There was like, I had a decent amount of SD card cameras in that area, and I'd get them like 2 miles over this way, and in the day that I missed him there, I had him on a camera a mile away 45 minutes before that. I mean, he was covering ground.
Yeah.
But I did learn a lot about that deer, after the facts, in places where I'd found his shed and where I thought he was bedding, I'm seeing deer years later using similarly. I don't think he was as random as I thought. I was just learning the area a little bit more, and now I feel like I have a little bit of a better grasp on it. But it's that deer just, man, everyone in my family knew, because I just never shut up about that deer and
Yeah.
trying to hunt them and trying to get opportunities. And I had it that first year and just never could. He just won.
Before you had that encounter with him, at the beaver pond spot, why did you pick that beaver pond spot? Was he spending a little bit more time there or something? Did you get him, like, why were you hunting there that day? Do you remember?
I don't think I had any photos of him at that, or no, I did. I had a camera on the creek crossing at that point, and because I don't think the scrape was there yet. But there was a crossing, kind of an oxbow of the creek, and he'd come up the steep hill, and I had a camera up in a tree facing down that hill, and I had him in the middle of the night, so it wasn't anything else. But it was just like when I was scouting in. I think I found it in November. I went down in there, and it was just like one of those spots that was like, these trails like
You
met
feel it.
there. And I was like, the beaver pond's here. So like the way the wind would work, and it laid out nice where a west wind would blow down the creek, and you'd hit that beaver pond, and especially on those cold mornings, that water was warmer than the air. So like, at least the way I made it feel is I'm drawing on the screen for anyone listening, but like, it would come down and hit that, and you'd watch your scent just like go up. So to me, it felt like a bulletproof setup. And so that was like, and I parked my butt in that tree, and that was, I don't know, 5 days in when I had that encounter with him from that spot. And I just was like, this is, looking at everything else and all the stuff I don't know, this gives me the best odds of him coming through here at some point.
Yeah. And so after that encounter, when you shot him, he never came back there though, did he? He never went back to that spot.
No, he did not. Not that I saw. I'm sure he was using the area, but I never got photos of him there again. So
yeah, it reminds me a lot of this deer in 2021 that I was hunting. That was a big deer. Probably body wise 250 pounds, and he was old. You could just tell he was, at that point, probably 8 years old. And it was like the biggest deer I had on camera in a long time. And I got a picture of him one morning at like 3 a.m. in this area. So I go in there. I'm set up in my stand at like 5:30 a.m. And once it got light, I rattled. The only thing that was different about it was, instead of grunting, I rattled, and 3 deer came charging down the hill. The ridge that was up off to my right, like three deer. They must not have been too far away, but when they heard the rattling, they just like all kind of came charging in, and then they started fighting each other in front of me. And I'm looking at them, and I'm like, well, this isn't the giant. These aren't the giants. There were a couple of good ones, like 120, like low 120s fighting, and then there was a spike. But I'm just thinking, man, he's got to be around here somewhere. And I'm looking, and he was already circled downwind, and he was coming in very slow and methodical while they were just doing their thing fighting. And just watching how he behaved, man, he came in like he had been through some shit, and he was trying to figure me out, because he was like, that doesn't make any sense. It wasn't those bucks right there that were fighting. That's part of my group that I don't know and understand. That was something else. And he came in where all I could see was his rack. I was up high in a tree, and off to my right, there's I'm kind of level with this ridge, and then it drops down. He was down in that bottom. I could just see his rack coming through, but it was almost like he knew, like, don't get up on top. If he came up on the top of that ridge, I would have had like a 30-yard shot, but he was down in the bottom, and then he just stood behind a giant pine tree. And I would see his, he was facing me. He knew exactly where it came from. I would just see every once in a while, like his antler, peek from behind it. He stood there for 35 minutes, and then he finally just walked away and he kept that pine tree between us the entire time. And so just super smart, man. And then he never showed back up in that area.
They're just a different animal when they get to a certain age. I mean, it's not even always, I mean, I think it's more age than the antler size, but like they just get so smart because I think that mature deer that become that smart, they got there because they got lucky a few times and they learned from it.
Yeah.
It's hard to hunt. And like, honestly, there was only one other time that I'd hunted like a particular deer exclusively because like I just hate it. Actually typically takes the fun out of it for me.
Yeah.
But,
I'm with
did
you.
Did you ever see that deer again that you were?
So the crazy thing about that is he disappeared and I spent a lot of time trying to find out where he was. And the same thing you went through, like he's probably dead somewhere. Somebody killed him. I never heard about it. He got hit by a car. And then I abandoned that spot. That spot was so money that first year that I found it. I mean, I had that one opportunity at him. If I didn't kill him then, I kind of blew it. And it took the fun out of that spot for me. So I abandoned it and I didn't go back there. The next year I went back there, I hung cameras. He never showed back up. It was just younger bucks, but he was in there so much that year in the early season. I had so many videos of him right under my stand. There was a nice scrape there. There was a lot of browse. He was in there almost every single night. I'd get cell phone pictures, just texted to me. Oh, there it is, 7 p.m. I know it's going to be him coming in. Like he was spending so much time in there, and I never hunted it until I think it was like November 4th when I went in that day to hunt him. And then he was never in there again. And I figured, all right, maybe next year, early season again, during the summer, he'll still be here. He wasn't. I wasn't able to find out where he was, wherever he moved to. And I just thought for sure he was gone because I had plenty of, this is a big patch of woods, and I had plenty of cameras all across it. It's probably like a couple 1,000-acre patch of woods, which in my neck of the woods of Massachusetts is a big patch. And I had that place covered, never had a picture of him again. But in 2023, it was like, I think, it was 2024, 3 years after that, where I just forgot about him. I ended up, I was still hunting on opening day of gun season, and I was just going on a big still hunt. I love still hunting. The conditions were good for it. It was really windy. And it was very end of November, if not the first day of December, but still, got some rut going on. And I end up in 2 or 3 hours into my still hunt, I'm going up this logging road that's cutting up a steep ridge. And I just see a deer standing up there, and it was broadside and looked pretty big. And I froze, mid-step, I froze and I looked up at it, and I raised my gun up super slow and turned and looked, and it was a doe standing there looking at me. But behind her, up at the top of the ridge, I could just see tips of tines, again, same thing that he did years before where, he had some sense where he didn't want to crest up over the ridge. He was kind of staying back. Mm-hmm. But I could see the tines moving. I had no idea at the time that it was him, but it ended up being him. And that doe was locked on to me. She was watching me, walking up that logging road. And even though I was, stuck mid stride there, she knew. So in my head, I know she's going to blow at some point here and she's going to take off. But that buck that's with her is going to take off wherever she goes. So I got to get ready. So she blew, and he ended up cresting the ridge. He came up like this, and all I could see, he went out while his rack like went up and his tines went out like that. But he stood there like this, barrel chested, and I thought about shooting him right in the chest, but I didn't. And then where that doe took off to, she blew again. And the second blow, he whipped his head, like looked at her, and I could tell he was gearing up to just start taking off. When he turned sideways, whipped his head that way, I shot him right in the neck, and he freaking flopped right over. I thought he was dead. I had a muzzleloader, and I had a disaster reload with my muzzleloader. I thought he was dead, so I didn't even reload at first, which was a big mistake. But he was just temporarily stunned for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then he started kicking and spinning around and then pushing himself across the ridge. And then now I'm like fumbling to reload, and I just messed it up and never ended up getting a second shot off on him. And long story short, he got up and he walked away. There was so much blood up there. I thought for sure maybe I'd still go, find him dead, but never found him. He survived. And even last year, he's still alive. Like he's probably 12 or 13 years old,
Dang,
but
dude,
he's
that's
that deer is
crazy.
still alive, dude.
That is that's one of the craziest stories. The fact that you shot him in the neck like that, and he got back up, and I mean, they're he's just got a will to live too, I'm sure. Like they're such freaking tough animals.
Dude, 12 hours later, I didn't know this until after the season, but a landowner nearby had a video of that buck just eating, walking normally, just acting like nothing ever happened. 12 hours later, with a hole in his neck, you can see it in the video, and he was just acting completely fine. And that landowner knew that I was all eaten up about it. And I was like, I don't know if he's dead, and I'm never going to find him. And he knew he was alive, but he was like, I just didn't want to tell you during the deer season because I know you wouldn't have given up on him. And this landowner felt like that deer was his pet. He like knew him since he was like 2 or 3 years old. He had known this deer for years and watched him grow up. So he didn't let me know until after the season, and that's when I found out. I was like, damn, he's still alive. What a deer, man.
It's the whole thing of like deer disappearing and then showing up again, like you just I think that's something, at least I do this, like when they disappear, I'm just like, oh, that deer, is dead. But I've had it happen where they'll show up, a couple years later. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
like it's wild, but it's like, what changed? Like what made them do that? It always makes my mind, try to come up with some sort of logical reason on, am I just off? Like, is he just not walking in front of my cameras now? Like, what is the thing that does it? But it's crazy.
Yeah, but it ends up giving you once you have a few of those, because that's happened to me now a few times too. It's like, all right, so you don't get down when you don't see a deer for a year or something. You hold out hope that he's still alive out there somewhere. Is just not cycling back into that area. Something pushed him out.
Yeah,
It's
that's
probably you. Yeah,
you're probably right.
yeah. Let's talk about access a little bit. You were talking about trying to, when you're e-scouting, moving around and trying to find some access and reverse engineering that. What do you have any like crazy access missions that you went through to try to get into a certain piece? Or I kind of imagine the big woods, Pennsylvania access is usually pretty easy in big woods because you've got a lot of pull offs, like you said, you can just go into. But are there any things that come to mind where you had to like reverse engineer and go to some crazy lengths to access a spot?
Yeah, there's actually a good story with this. Is the deer I shot in 2021 on opening day. It's still my biggest archery buck to date. And there was, okay, so think of like a couple of different ridges, and you could park on top of either of them, but the one had a fresh cut, a select cut that happened over the winter. And I was getting photos of this real nice 9-point in the wintertime coming off of the hill, crossing or walking parallel to the creek, and in the wintertime. And I was assuming he's feeding up in that logging cut. There was also oak trees. They left some of the mature oaks up in there. So there's red oaks on the ground, all that stuff. And so coming back to the next year, I checked those oak trees in late August, and they had acorns on it. And I was like, boom. And I typically go out west in September. So like right before season, I'm not typically in the woods or scouting. I come back and it's kind of, it's actually funny. That's the last opening day I've hunted because I've been somewhere else during that time frame. But I didn't have any real data. I ended up picking up both of his sheds. Not in that cut, but in the general area. One where I think he was bedding at, another one just randomly while I was turkey hunting, I came across it.
Yeah.
But that next year I had pictures of him in the summer, so I knew he made it. And I was like, man, he put on some inches. Like, that's a good looking deer, but I still didn't know exactly how big he was. And he just had one of those frames that was like, he had everything, but nothing that made him like look giant. It was just like good beams, good width, good tines, that whole deal. In right before I went out west, late August, early September, somewhere along those lines, I went in there and I was like, I just have this feeling that I'm going to shoot him at this creek crossing here early on. I think I have a chance. And I was thinking it could be a good rut spot too. So like, and I was going there and I was looking at the data, the historical pictures of this deer. And when I'd have him on that camera, it was a southwest wind. And I was looking on a normal southwest wind that would blow kind of quarter to him as he was coming down through there. And the bottom was kind of wide enough that you would, on a strong wind, you could get a good prevailing that would kind of come through there. And it was like the mouth of like the ridges was to the south, so it would come up from, so there wasn't like ridges that were blocking it, so you'd have a prevailing wind, for the lack of better terms, but coming through there. And I was like, how can I hunt this on that type of wind? And there was the creek was about 20 yards off of where these trails met, and there was a big beech tree there, and in all hemlock side hill. It was a beautiful spot. And I walked over to right above the creek and I dropped milkweed and it would fall down into the water. I'd walk up to where he'd walk, wind would go the other direction. And I was like, okay, I think I can get away with this, but I'm going to need to access coming up this creek and come right up the bank and then slip up the tree in my saddle. So I was checking that, and I don't know, I had more confidence than I probably should have. I didn't have any like that year data at that spot. He wasn't even on there in the summer, I don't believe.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering right, but it's just like, okay, there's oaks there again. It's a newer cut. There's browse. Like in this area, there wasn't like oaks everywhere. Like this is a place that they're going to feed. And it seems like in the past, he liked to do this. So, and it just so happened that opening day was like a 20-degree temperature drop. So it was like going to be in the low 40s, upper 30s in the morning. So for like October 2nd, that's crazy cold.
Yeah.
For where we're at, or good weather. So I made a plan to go in there, but instead of accessing where I could park in the oaks in the cut, I parked 2 miles down at the mouth of this creek and I just followed that up. But going in the morning, it was so weird because that deer and then the one I shot this last year in PA was, I had a weird amount of confidence that I don't normally have, like of thinking like, I think I'm going to shoot a buck today sort of deal. Like I always feel confident to an extent, or like, not, I shouldn't say confident, hopeful, and positive thinking, but like I felt really good about this. And I was slipping up through and I made one of the most critical mistakes. There was like this old grassy road that would go through, but at the bottom of it, still about a mile away from where I needed to be. I knew I could get away with a lot more downstream. And then once I got within 300 yards, I was going to walk in the water or on the bank, like to get up in there. So I'm walking on the edge of it, on this grassy road, but it veered off. So it like went up the hill and around and eventually would come back. But I was like, I'm going to shortcut this and just go straight. Well, I got into like just a wall of brush and I'm like in the middle of it. I'm getting hung up on things like, just like it's opening day. So you're ready, like not in the white, like you don't have all your stuff dialed like you do come November of like hunting. I'm getting caught up. My bow's caught on branches. Like I'm just sweating and I'm like, this is not good. And eventually I get my way back out. I hit the trail, go up and then drop back down on the bottom on the other side of that thicket. Worked my way up, climbed up the tree, and the first hour and a half of daylight was nothing, just crickets. And I think it was about 8:30 or 9 in the morning. All of a sudden, because it was, you got the stream behind you, so like you hear just running water, and it's hemlock all through there. So underneath, there's not even leaf litter, so it's quiet. Like you see a deer before you hear them, and they're probably going to be pretty close. And all of a sudden, I caught him coming down off of this trail, and at this point, he's already at like 26 yards, and I just grabbed my bow, and he came through right to this opening. He's standing in front of my camera, right next to my camera at this point. that I had there, and 14 yards. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Can't wait. This is what's going through my head, believe it or not. I was like, can't wait to call my dad, like saying all this stuff. And dude, I missed. I completely airballed it at 14 yards, and he runs out a little ways and stops and is like looking back. And I can't remember if he was blowing or not, but I grabbed another arrow, pulled back, and then that's where I hit him at. And yeah. So it was like just an absolute crazy scenario, but like access, I believe, played everything into that. If I would have parked in the other spot,
the easier spot,
yeah, it would not have worked out good. Now that was for like the morning, and like just to give one more example on access. So this past year, I was up in Canada moose hunting for the first 10 days of our season in PA. Came back, had to get caught up with a bunch of work. So it wasn't until October 15th or 16th before I could go actually hunting. And it was like, by the time I drove to the spot and got out, I was going to have 2 hours at the end of the day, but it was on the front end of a cold front coming that next day. And I was like, man, there's some oaks that were dropping that I found back in September there on the edge of a thicket. And I'm like, there was a scrape there. I had a camera on it, a cell camera on it, and conditions were similar a week before when I was in Canada, and this big deer came out right at last light, hit that scrape and worked through. I'm like, maybe it's going to happen again. And I was driving there. I was talking to my buddy on the phone, and I was like, man, I feel really good about tonight, but I was late getting there. So I'm late getting there, and then on the way I changed where I was going to park at and access, because I wasn't really even in the whitetail frame of mind yet. And I was like, I'll just park here, walk into the tree. And then I was thinking, I'm like, if I go there, if he's bedding over in this thicket, I was like, the thermals would be pulling up that hill. And I said, he's going to smell me before I even get there. He might not blow out, but he's probably not going to come out, even though the prevailing wind was going to, a different direction. So I was like thinking about it. I'm like, I'm going to have to come in through those oaks. I was like, it's going to suck at night. If I don't shoot something, I'm probably going to blow things out trying to get out of here. But I was like, I'm going to risk it. And so I went in, and man, the last like 100 yards to my tree, I was just like tiptoeing, and I didn't have a tree picked out. I was just like kind of going through, and all of a sudden I'm seeing big fresh rubs, and like 2 big oak trees there were like raining acorns. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a dream. And I looked, and I saw this tree that had a hemlock to the back, but I think it was a birch tree or something. I was like, that'd be perfect for back cover. And then I started going that way, and just like my scent, just something felt like I was pushing too far. And this was only 25 yards away from me at this point. And I'm like, I'm just going to go right up here and set up by this scrape. So I go up as quiet as I could. And I was actually pretty pumped with myself for the first time of climbing up in the tree, of not making any noise at all. Yeah. I slipped up, and as I was putting my platform on, a 2-year-old 8-point came out and hit the scrape that was at 10 yards from me at this point, and I'm froze. And he went and he got downwind of me, and he didn't blow. He just turned around, he ran back to where he came from. And I'm like, holy cow, like I'm late. So I get up and I get the platform set. I'm in there, and by that point, all of a sudden the spike's coming out and heading to the tree. And spikes, like, so that oak tree, which this was kind of risky, but the oak tree was directly downwind of me. So if they got to that, like, their game is over. But spikes just don't really pick up on. He's kind of like looking around, like, what's up? And so anyways, to make a long story short, another spike came out. It seemed like every buck in the whole area was like in this spot feeding on those trees. While I was filming the one that was underneath the tree with my phone, because I didn't have time to get my camera equipment out, I was filming my phone. I hear a blow it, and I look to my right, and there's another spike, and he's looking at me, and he's trying to figure out what I am, and he's making a bunch of noise, and I'm like, man, like I can't get away with this many times, and so I just froze, and I just didn't move, and I'm looking down, and then I hear like a real deep like like blow, but it's like, man, that sounds like a big deer, and I so I still didn't want to, and I just kind of looked out of the corner of my eye, and I see this big buck like staring this way, but didn't know what it was. He was blowing it because that other deer was, and he had stepped out, and I just froze for what felt like forever until that spike
You didn't have
got
your
back.
platform up yet, did you?
No, I was set up at this point.
You were, okay.
I was set up, but so now this spike goes around and starts harassing this big buck, and because he turned around and like tried to shove him off, I was able to get a range, and then that's when I drew back and ended up shooting him and killing that
nice.
deer. But
Yeah.
where the whole reason I told all of that is because when I went to go blood trail him and I started going in, I found the bed that he was laying in, and that not only would he been able to smell me from the earlier place I came in, he would have been able to see me. There was like this old logging road that came up, and it was like, I actually went back. It's a video is going to come out this summer where I went back in the spring and showed like the view from that bed of where, and he was only laying 10 yards in from where I shot him. Like, and so that other tree I was going to climb, I would have blown him out. I would have been right in his face, coming through there. So there was a lot of luck that happened in it, but like, that's where that access side of things, especially earlier on, can be so critical.
Yeah, he's probably was bedding in that area because he had known that, that predators, whether it's a human or you specifically, or coyotes, are using that, that trail,
Well,
that
and I
old
think there
logging
was,
road.
and I think because the area has a like through the oaks, there's just ladder stands everywhere, and people were hunting the big open oaks there. But I
Yeah.
knew there was still, and I hated hunting that.
People love putting ladder stands in those big open oak stands.
Yeah, and but I was like, there's still mature bucks here, so it's like, how do I figure out where they're at? And it was just like one of those things where when I was scouting in there in September, it was like I was pushing until all of a sudden I saw a wall of blackberry briars that was underneath. It was like, okay, difference here. I could see them laying there, looking at where I have it marked on my map on Spartan Forge of like where all the stands are, and you could see like a pattern. It's like, this is just outside of it. I said, I bet those guys are getting him on their cameras at night. But, and believe it or not, like my camera that was just on the other side of me, 10 yards away, I only had one picture of this deer ever there, which I think he was there more so than that. But it just shows you how cameras are only telling just a little bit of the whole story.
Yeah, I've got a good I got a couple questions on trail cameras that we'll get to, but let's just quickly briefly talk about Hunt Stock for a minute here. So Hunt Stock Northeast, it's August 7th, 8th, and 9th at Wildwood Farm, the same place we've been doing it the last 4 years. This will be our 5th year doing it there. Super stoked to have you coming. We've got a lot of our regulars that are there doing seminars, like Lanny Benoit and Rick Labby and Jake Bennett and Jeff Doyle, a bunch of really great hunters. And then Dan Infalt's coming back. He came last year and really enjoyed himself. So he'll be coming back to the Northeast. You'll be coming to do some seminars. And I believe podcast, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then we've got Joe Donito and Jim Massett, who haven't been to Hunt Stock in Massachusetts since 2023. So they'll be back there again. Super awesome show planned. We've got a 20 target 3D archery course that people rave about. We've kind of tried to set it up so it's, real life hunting scenarios, stuff that you might actually encounter just a couple of months after Hunt Stock. So it's a good way to get warmed up for the season. And then a film festival on Thursday night, just a bunch of really fun stuff. So come and check out Hunt Stock and come say hi to Beau. If you want to get tickets, get them at www.huntstockevents.com. click on the events tab, click on Hunt Stock Northeast, and use code Beau for 10% off your tickets. We don't have any ticketing fees. We changed ticketing platforms this year. Last year we were on a different one, and there's all these, extra fees and stuff. We got rid of all that. We've got kind of a bespoke ticketing platform now that we control everything. So no ticketing fees. It will be the cheapest way to get tickets. Get on there. Use code Beau for 10% off, and just plan ahead. It's going to be a really fun weekend, man. We're looking forward to having you up there.
Is that hold on a second? Is that what my code is? Is it Beau?
I've got different codes for you to try to track where people are
here.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Dude, I'm super pumped to get to come there and see everyone I've talked to is like, man, the MASH show is so much fun, and to get to do it. Like I said, I enjoyed the New York show and getting to meet all the people that came there, the different speakers. It's just like one big deer camp, and like I enjoy that, and I'm really excited to do that. Like you said, I don't have my exact topic yet. What I'm gonna I've been working on thinking of what's the best thing to do the seminar on, and then the live podcast should be fun. We did that a couple years ago. I did it with Joe Donito in New York, and like that was really fun to be able to do.
Yeah, it's cool because it's still basically you're pulling a lot of information out of a great hunter, and then you leave with a podcast in your pocket too that you can repurpose. I think it's a really cool way to go. When doing seminars, are you coming solo to that show, or are you bringing anybody?
I haven't talked to anybody yet, so I'll probably be solo. I may try to bring either Kenny along, which you met Kenny. He was there helping me last time.
Yeah.
He doesn't know it yet, but he's always down if he doesn't have anything going on. Or I may try to bring Johnny along, Johnny Stewart, to come up. And Johnny, he loves the Northeast and he loves tracking, and I think he'd have a really good time. So I'm going to talk to him as well.
Yeah, that'd be cool. It'd be cool to meet Johnny. I've heard a lot about him. I haven't really consumed much of his content or heard any interviews, but I do get a lot of suggestions to have him on the podcast. So maybe you can help line that up. I'd love to.
Yeah, I definitely can.
Yeah, I'd love to interview him. I've heard that he knows what he's doing. You want
to talk about an actual deer of a human.
Deer of a human.
Yeah. It's just every time I'm around him, I hear something new, and I'm around him a lot. And like every time I hear something, I'm just like, sometimes it's like, it's so crazy that it seems like it's just the way his brain works. And he just spends so much time in the woods. I think he spends more time around deer than he does people. And I can't speak, highly enough about Johnny and his knowledge and everything.
Yeah, feels more like he is a deer than a human. Probably relates with deer better than more
probably.
Than yeah. Well, that's cool, man. Awesome. All right, so we'll roll back into the podcast here. Have trail cameras over the years for you? Like, have you had a different relationship with them? Love, hate. Have they become more useful to you or less useful over the years? Like, how's your relationship with trail cameras been?
It's an off and on thing, man. Like we're good one day, the next day we're not. No, but I feel like I still have a good relationship with trail cameras. I like using trail cameras. I obsess over historical data. I love looking at photos and videos, and I learned so much about places, about spots that I can use for the future. The biggest change with trail cameras was the introduction of cell cameras and them being so accessible, and like me using more of them. It took a little bit of it definitely takes discipline of like not caring exactly what is showing up on those cell cameras, because like I've seen it turn really good hunters into not as good of hunters, just from the standpoint of them all of a sudden relying on something that they didn't need before. And it's just like in the areas that I hunt, and I think it's probably this way in a lot of places, but typically if you get a picture of a deer, you're too late. And I've found that like I still use them more so from a historical standpoint than I do real-time data. The caveat to that is like I do pay attention to, say, on scrapes in October, and all of a sudden I start getting a few bucks at nighttime hitting a scrape that had been dead. I'm looking ahead to when that next cold weather front's coming in, and that's something actionable that I will utilize and work
Or some
towards
rain,
doing.
or something, right? Because you're like, all right, he's gonna
Yes.
probably want to go freshen that up. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Or if I see a doe that's just kind of acting weird and might lay down by the scrape, it's like she's ready to get bred, and it's at some point things are gonna pop off in here. So I need to be in there, but most of it I'm still using for that historical data to be able to see. It is I love that cell cameras can also confirm, like, still if a deer, even if it's at nighttime, like, all right, a deer's alive, and just gives me that a little bit of confirmation. But I don't get down if I'm not getting photos. I'm not going to not hunt a place because I'm not getting trail camera pictures. And I'm not also going to pull and leave a spot just because I'm not seeing anything to go because all of a sudden a camera 15 miles away got 2 bucks on it in daylight like that. That's every time I start chasing my tail and bouncing around, I don't do well. I find that hunting spots, which is counterintuitive to a lot of very successful people and what they do in different areas of the country, of like, bouncing around, first sit, best sit. I tend to have more success of sticking it out in places that I feel are good.
Me too. Yeah, me too. And you know what's funny too about the cameras is on the days where I've had some of the best action, had the most encounters with deer, bucks, everything. Typically when I'm in a spot, I can see one or two of my cameras from my tree stand location, right? But there's been days where I've had a couple of crazy days in Massachusetts where I've seen 44 deer, in the morning, different deer even in some of
Mm-hmm.
these places, and not one of them went by the cameras, right? So if you were just going by cameras and trying to hunt when a picture comes by, I mean, you're missing out, man, because cameras only are capturing a very small section of these giant pieces of land that we're able to go out and hunt, man. It just seems like it's like clockwork, dude, that whenever I have a really busy day, none of those deer are walking by those cameras.
Well, even in the tightest of funnels, deer don't have to walk in that small area all the time. Unless you have a 300-foot cliff below and a 300-foot cliff above, and everything moves into a 10 by 10 area,
Yeah.
you're going to miss things that come through that circle. 100%. The best days I've had in the woods, my camera could be in eyesight and none of those deer would be on that camera, or I might get like a spike that walks through it. And if so, like, so that's like when I'm looking at trail camera data, I still put a lot of emphasis on it, but I put a multiplier to it of like, okay, this buck was here one time on my camera. Well, he might be there 3 or 4 times that because he's just not walking in front of that area.
Let's talk about your the data part a little bit, and then how you analyze your data, because I'm sure with AI and things these days, there could be easier ways to utilize AI to help you interpret and gather all of the data, but it can be a time consuming process, because I did some of that. I don't do it that much at all anymore, because it is time consuming doing it the old school way, like uploading those SD card cameras and making a spreadsheet yourself, and inputting all of the stuff that you're seeing on that picture, all of that data, just actually physically inputting it yourself. Like what are you doing, and how are you sorting it, and what are you looking for when you're analyzing all of the data?
Yeah, so I've looked for many easier ways to be able to do it. And there are things like, say, if you're running one camera company and you're using a bunch of cell cameras, that can be helpful. Like I am using a bunch of Tacticams, so it's like if I have an area where the majority of the cameras are Tacticam versus SD cameras, you can get a lot of data there. But still, like, I don't have, not every photo sent to me. I have to request for, a video to be sent. There's things that can be missed in that stuff. So I'll do that. And that app is really nice to be able to go in there and see trends. And that's kind of like my quick look at things. Now, what I've found is I still go and pull every SD card. I put them in my computer, I download them, I go through them, delete all the photos that are unnecessary, have that there. Once I have everything in there, now I go through it by the dates, and particular deer I'll throw in a spreadsheet. And I don't do every deer anymore, like every buck picture or whatever, because it's too much. And then this is where I think AI will help me this year as I go through my stuff from last year, is pulling historical weather data, where I was manually going to Weather Underground, putting in the zip code, and then typing in the temperature, the wind direction, anything else that was like pertinent. That stuff took a lot of time, but I'll do that with deer. Now, for the podcast and everything, I've actually started going through and making spreadsheets of all deer that are 2.5 years or older in daylight, and then 4.5 years or older in daylight, and seeing trends for the last 6-7 years of like what dates, times, weather conditions are doing well. But for me, like, if I was somebody listening to this, I don't think you need to do that. It's like, it depends on what you're looking for. Or another example is, if you're not hunting a specific deer, then do it by spots, because like certain places, a camera spot will heat up the same time every year. And that's, I put a lot of emphasis on that. And even if I am hunting a specific deer, it's like, okay, I'm hunting this deer, this scrape I'm going to hunt. I need to be there from the first cold front towards the end of October till November 1st. That point, I need to move to this other area, because that's when I've have the data there. And it's like, I use it in that way. And that helps take that emotion out of it. Because when you're in the middle of hunting and things aren't going your way, you start creating problems that aren't there, where it's just like, it's not the time. It just takes time. No matter how good you are, it's just going to take time to, be successful. And that helps take that out of it for me, that guessing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like once you start doing information overload and second guessing yourself, we've all been there, and it's that is not fun. How much of like a place heating up, so I imagine what you're getting at is like, if you want to analyze it by spot, so that you say, all right, let's look at all the spots where I have cameras, and we'll look at all the daylight activity for bucks that are 2.5 years or older. And it's like, this spot during this week, if you flip on that 2.5 year or older, buck activity during daylight, this one is like double all the other spots. So it tells you, I gotta go sit in that spot during this time frame. How much of that do you think is related to the does in that area that come into heat during the same time every year? I mean, probably a big part of it.
Yeah, most of it. Like, I think a lot of it is correlated to that. And it seems like, I think like specific does is definitely important, but it does seem that generationally they will do that in similar spots. Like, one scrape I've had a camera on for 10 years, and it's been the last week of October. Every time, as soon as there's some cold weather, it could fluctuate from October 22nd to the 28th before it starts heating up. But then it's like a 3-day window where it's really good. And it's like weather related within that. Now, the one thing I'll say about historical data where it can burn you is if things were, say, maybe an anomaly year. If you have 1 year of data and it's a massive mass crop, you had really cold weather during that week, what might look like that spot is phenomenal during that week when you had that weather and you had the food. Next year, all of a sudden, there's no oaks. It's dry. It's hot. You need I really put an asterisk next to it at that point. I might not have that confidence. I need more to tell me I need to still try to do that, something else that's in there. Because I've been caught in that before of just relying on historical data, and I'd be sitting in there and I'm like, and so what I started doing is literally, it's so simple, but it's hard to do in the moment. It's just a pros and cons list of like, what are the pros for me sitting here? It's like, okay, historical data, I saw some does. Okay, that's good. But it's like cons. Okay, there's no food here anymore. The deer, that scrape is not what it looked like last year at this time. The weather's hot. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, there's way more cons than there is pros. I need to go find where they're at, right now. But hold on.
Yeah, it's there's just so many dang variables when it comes to every hunting day and scenario and time frame, and there's so many variables that it's like I try to put the variables, out of my head and focus on the constants as much as possible. And if you can do that, then it helps with predictability a little bit more. Focus on the things that are going to be the same, like those doe groups coming into heat year after year. The terrain features, the terrain is never changing. There are certain things that you can focus on, but yeah, then it's really important to think about all the variables, right, and how that relates back to that constant.
Hold on, get out of here. Sorry, dogs.
I was gonna say, is that your kitty?
No, that's a dog. Out of here, Pam. She was getting into she's hungry and is getting into my Zen containers.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know they liked they like the smell of Zens.
It was just a wrapper, so there was like a tube of them, and
yeah.
Anyway, sorry about that, but
dude, no problem.
The thing about the constant. So here's something that I do to try to help with those constants. So I talk about the food source example. At home, like I have places that have oak trees, and there's places that don't have any mast, and I tend to hunt those during the rut that don't have mast because it's very constant. That takes that variable out of it, of the food, and there's a lot of browse there. It's like, no matter what, these deer are probably going to be here unless they come in and log it or do something different. So that gives me a constant to hunt during that time of year, versus an area that's like, I've seen it. I've hunted places that say you have the public is all rigid, big, mature timber oak, and then there might be private 3 or 4 or 5 miles away that's lower, that's ag. In the years that there's no acorns, those deer aren't even in the hills. They're not even, they're down towards that ag. And it's like, I don't like that when possible. Like, you can't always predict that, but that makes it tough because now they're not even in a place that you can hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do a couple more questions and then wrap it up here. I'm curious about what your thoughts are on calling. Like, when do you utilize calling, grunts, and rattling? One of your favorite times to utilize them, if at all? And then the other part to that question is, do you ever blind call? Do you like doing that, or what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah. I love calling. I'm a big blind caller too. But I don't rattle much really at all. The first time I've ever had success rattling was in Iowa this past year. And I killed my buck from rattling him in because he couldn't hear anything over the wind when it came to grunts or anything else. So that was just like, just trying it. But the only time when I've rattled before, I've had deer circle me like you've talked about. And it's like, it's thick in a lot of these spots. And it's like, I can't shoot if they get behind me. That situation in Iowa was perfect. I had a crick next to me. The only way for him to get around me was to go in a place where I could shoot him. And now grunting and bleeding. So I'll start in like mid-October with some grunts, maybe a little bit of blind grunting, but not that heavy until I start getting late October and November. It could be it's very situational, but if I'm in a thick area, I'm grunting a lot. If I'm in more open woods, I'm not grunting as much because they can see me for a long ways away. But if I'm in a spot where a deer could be moving 60 yards away from me and I can't see him,
Yeah.
I want to almost be constantly getting a little bit of noise, and I'm in that spot to hopefully entice them to come through where I'm at. So I'll do like kind of light grunting. And when it comes to like the rut in the November, I'll do bleat and grunt sequences and try to mimic a buck following a doe. And, I'll take my grunt tube and and kind of move it as it's going through. If I see a buck and he's going the opposite direction, I'll start kind of lighter with the grunts, and then I'll get to like a deep kind of growl. I like a grunt call that's got a real deep tone to it. So that's what I'll do to try to get them to be able to come in.
Now you seem like someone who's got a kind of a good balance of being really aggressive at times, like the story you're talking about, and access and how you're making these tough decisions, like changing your access points and going in, like in that sense, you can be really aggressive. And then in other ways, like hunting the same stand, and kind of sticking out a spot for a long time, you're more passive, and patient. How do you when are times when you feel like you have to get more aggressive versus you have to be more patient?
I feel like I'm more patient the more information I have or the more confident I am in a spot. That's when like, and especially during the rut, it's like, man, they could be in a lot of places during that. I need to, and I just learned it from before there was a ton of hunting media out there. I was having more success than when I first got into the space and I started moving around, and I was like always chasing my tail. And I'd check, this is even before cell cameras, I'd check the SD camera when I moved to the spot and I was a day behind, or I left and you see me going across the camera leaving, and the next day, a deer's there. And it was just like, all right, before I thought I knew all this stuff, just being patient in these areas that were good led to more success. So that's why I've kind of went back in the last 6-7 years to that, or really the last 6 years, to that patience model when it comes to hunting the rut. Now, what will change that even during the rut is high winds. High winds, I want to get on the ground and still hunt. And that's how I shot my deer in 2024 doing that. I was hunting the edge of this clear cut, and there was also hunting pressure around me the other days. And I was like, they've got to be in there. And we had 25, 30 mile per hour winds. It wasn't really safe to be in a tree anyway. So I was like, got down midday and still hunting my way through the clear cut and ended up shooting a deer at, 10 yards. So like, that's when I'll get aggressive. Or if I'm going out of state and I don't know enough information, I'll get aggressive. Once I, like in Iowa this past year, typically I would have been more aggressive, but when I got into this spot, it was like there was a funnel there. I watched does bed in this draw, like you could visually see because it was more open. Wind was coming down here. It was like I'm on the downwind side of doe bedding. Things funnel through here, looking at the maps. I need to be patient. And I sat there for 4 out of the 5 days. The only day I didn't sit there was the wind was completely wrong for it. And on the 5th day, I shot a buck there. So I like to think I float a little bit depending on the conditions and what I feel like I know.
Yeah. I can't stress enough how fun it is and how rewarding and successful it can be to when you have those high wind days, get down out of your tree and move around, do some still hunting, even with a bow in your hand. It's so exciting. I've killed a few deer doing that, and I've had in the last couple of years a couple of close encounters where one thing just didn't go right. But it's so fun to do that. I think so many people aren't. They're kind of afraid to be on the ground with their bow and moving around because it just feels kind of anti to bow hunting. But it's so much fun, and you can have a lot of success doing that. And the same thing with with a steady rain. If the rain's not going to let up, it looks like it's going to rain all day and it's not going to let up, and you're not going to have that magical moment where, a buck's going to come and hit that scrape you're sitting over after the rain stops. If it looks like it's going to be a steady rain for most of the day, dude, don't be afraid to walk around. It's the same type of thing. I get a little, I get super excited when I see that it's going to be really windy or it's going to be rainy for a day, because it gets you a break. Gets you out of that tree, dude. Yeah, it changes. Yeah. It just changes the way you're able to get out there and hunt and hunt in a different way, and it's super fun.
And it's like when it comes to like gun season, most of the time I'm on the ground.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll still climb in a tree if I have some sort of confidence for whatever reason. But I love still hunting when the conditions are right to and being on the ground. And I'm at that point, I'm honestly sick of sitting in a tree. Like I love getting on the ground and working through places. But I think you can pigeonhole yourself into like, this is the only, there's a million different ways to kill a deer. Nothing I say is the Bible of deer. Like, this is just what I've found is work for me. And I like to kind of play depending on what the conditions are based off the experience I've had to try to increase my odds and make it fun at the same time. And man, getting on the ground can be some of the most fun action. Now, if it's dead calm and the leaves are crunchy, like that's you good luck.
Yeah those are the days you want to be in a tree for sure.
Yeah
but also I've had some success on super crunchy days if it's really cold, just trying to mimic, or even not hunting but getting to your stand and out of your stand on days like that. If you really take your time when it's super crunchy and you got to pretend you're a deer, you got to Johnny Stewart yourself and really believe that you are a deer going in there. Take everything you've learned from seeing how deer move, and they're not constantly walking. It's it's a few, unless it's that time of the year, but it's a few steps and they stop and they're gonna snap a couple of branches and eat some acorns. Like, do that stuff on your way in when it's super crunchy. And you'll be surprised how many deer might hear you going in, but just think you're a deer. And then once you get set up, they're coming out. Like, you can use those crunchy conditions to your advantage when you have them.
Well, and like, yeah, Johnny is a great example of that. Like, I've been with him when he'll do his deer walk where he's heel to toe. And he's like, as he's going through some of those crunchy areas or in places, it's not, I don't think you're allowed to do it everywhere, but some places you're allowed to use a turkey call as you're going in. If he's going into a place that's kind of crunchy leaves, and he'll just have his mouth call in his pocket and then like kind of move leaves away like it's a turkey feeding, walking through on his way in. Like, there's plenty of things if you just kind of think outside the box a little bit because the thing is, I am very lucky. I get a good amount of time to be able to hunt, but not everybody has that. And just a few years ago, I was in that position where I had very minimal time when I could hunt. So I had to hunt whatever the conditions were. So to try to adapt to what you're dealt with is I think really important.
Yeah, that's a good point too. You don't have to sound like a deer. I think the key when you're moving through the woods is that you just keep in the back of your mind is you just don't want to make any noise that sounds like a human. That's going to tip them off that you're a human. No metal clanking, no cell phone sounds, no constant heavy steps. You could be pretend you're any other animal, and it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
To finish off the podcast, we're going to just do a couple of quick rapid fire questions. So not a bunch of elaborating, just whatever the first thing that comes to your mind. What's your favorite weather to hunt?
Day after snow.
Okay. Day after the snow. What do you think is the most overrated deer hunting tactic?
Overrated?
Yeah.
Moving every sit.
Okay, that's a good one. What's the most underrated?
Ground hunting with a bow.
There you go. I love it. Saddle or hang on?
Saddle.
Yep, saddle all day. Morning or evening sits? Me too. Dude, we're on the same page on these ones. What's the best state for hunting mountain whitetails?
Ooh, I'm going to make somebody mad with that.
You're going to say West Virginia, aren't you?
No. Dang, That's a tough one. All I can say, the one I have most experience in is Pennsylvania. So I guess I'll just go with that and make make everyone else angry in my own state. But I know you said no elaborating, but I am gonna say one thing on
Yeah,
that
go for it.
is uh what I've found is like, see, by having, I have this thing called Mountain Buck Monday that I share listeners of the podcast success that they write in, and I get them from all states throughout the Northeast down to the Southeast, all through the Appalachian Mountain Range. I mean, there's good bucks that are coming from every state. If you're looking for a mature buck, I think you find a place and that maybe there's a season, a type of weapon you want to hunt with and learn it. I think it's less about a magical spot, at least in like the mountains. And you can find good deer. There are definitely places that may have, bigger antlers in certain spots or genetics, but overall, like, I think most places are better than they have been.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I feel like the same thing is happening, and who knows what the reason for that is. But what's the hardest public land state that you've hunted?
I think it's a toss up between West Virginia and Pennsylvania. West Virginia is just so dang steep in places. It's just goat face steep everywhere, it seems like, and that makes it difficult. And like, there's not even a lot in a lot of the places I've hunted, other than if there's not an old logging road there, it's just straight up and straight down, like all through it. So that makes it really difficult. In Pennsylvania, it seems like no matter how much time I put in, it just doesn't get any easier for me there. I could probably throw New York in that same boat, but I don't have as much experience to say there.
Yeah, and the more challenging it is, really the more fun and rewarding it is too. So that's probably why you've fallen in love with West Virginia. One of the reasons.
Yeah, it is. I love it. Like I love my home state, and it's not because I think that deer hunting's better. At this point, like, I'm lucky I could go to other places that probably have better quality deer hunting, and I just love it. I don't know how else to put it. I like the grind. I like the scouting year round. I like doing all of that stuff. Like, that's fun to me. And I get more out of that than just antlers.
Absolutely, man. All right, then last one, and then we'll sign off. What's one thing that you wish you knew 10 years ago?
That this is going to sound really funny, but to take everything you hear on a podcast with a grain of salt, because everybody is basing their expertise based on their experience in their areas, and every area is just a little bit different. So the best piece of advice is take that information you're getting. It's good, but go prove it for yourself or disprove it. Even more importantly, in the areas that you have, get out in the woods and learn that stuff for yourself. Use this stuff to help get you to a place where you're understanding things, and there's so much good information out there, but don't rely on it as like, if I follow Dan Infalt's playbook, then I'm going to be successful. Or if I follow, Johnny Stewart's playbook, I'm going to be successful. You got to be your own hunter. Take that information and figure out your own style.
That's great advice, man. Appreciate you coming on, Beau. This was awesome, and looking forward to seeing you at Huntstock Northeast. Guys, make sure you come check out Beau. Come meet him at Huntstock Northeast, August 7th through the 9th at Wildwood Farm, Westminster, Massachusetts, and get your tickets online at huntstockevents.com. Beau, we'll sign off now, man, and really appreciate it. We'll see you this summer, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. I can't wait to come up there in August.
Yep, sounds good, dude. All right, we'll talk to you.